Julie Pickren in studio. I'm excited.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the bottom line. Thanks for coming in. I think our audience or the world audience that we're going to have see this episode is in for a treat. Really.
I hope we do a lot of good for children.
Yeah. You know, I was, people know this, that know me and follow me. I was raised by a single mom, and I go there. I'm so about single moms because it's a fight. It's a battle, right? And of course, single fathers too, very underserved and underappreciated, I think, single fathers. But women have influence. And my wife's busy with a book. She has a book called Women of Influence and a book called Arise. And my book coming out soon is called It Starts With Women. And people will say, well, Jaco, what starts with women? And I say, all of it.
Everything.
Sometimes trouble, you know. but honestly, if you go back my faith, Genesis 1, Satan. Why Eve? Why not Adam? Why Esther? Why, in biblical stories, why Delilah and Samson? That kind of stuff, right? Because women have influence.
That's right.
They do. Women can literally move the scepter of kings. They have influence. And so here's a woman of influence. Welcome.
Thank you.
Woman of influence. And you're choosing a very interesting path to take that influence for positive, for good, because it can be used for bad, as we'll see today. And you're directing it like we do at children and say, come on, we got to fight for children. So just let's dive right in. I'm going to go straight for the gusto.
Sure. But can I say that the reason why I do this is because of my pro-life values?
Please, go ahead.
It's because I am so pro-life that if we are going to say that every child deserves to be born, then every child deserves a great education to fulfill or to live out their American dream.
Absolutely. We had previous episode, we had Jaco Booyens on, and we talked about family, the importance of family, and why evil and Satan, evil people that come in agreement with evil, why they are proactively tearing family apart, incentivizing black fathers to leave the home. You know, it's the Industrial Revolution. Dad works, mom works, and we send our kids to what I call concentration camps, schools, to get indoctrinated by a radical ideology today. So you're saying every child deserves, and I agree, a phenomenal education for the American dream. Let's talk about the work that you're doing in schools. Come on, you've had to go live in Austin, Texas.
I did.
Right?
I did.
Let's just dive right in. Let's start with, if you don't mind, can we start with the bill you worked on that was such a craze last year about trans athletes in girls' sports?
Yes, that was Representative Valerie Swanson's bill, the Protect Girls Sports bill. So, I've worked with with our legislative body in Texas a lot for the past 3 sessions, specifically, issues to do with children and education. And there has never been a bill that was harder to get over the finish line than that bill. The woke corporations that we faced, the Chamber of Commerce's that we faced, the threats from NCAA and the threats from sports affiliates threatening to leave the great state of Texas for their functions. That bill was the hardest bill I have ever worked on.
Why? I mean, because you've worked on a lot of bills.
I have.
And this is coming straight. It's coming straight from the horse's mouth. Why was that the toughest bill? I mean, what were some of the justifications people were using to why trans athletes should be in girls' sports?
So between the House and the Senate, I sat through probably almost 40 hours of testimony, listening to what people had to say. And the thing that was the most shocking to me was how many pastors got up to testify against the bill, because their testimony was very consistent. They would get up and say that transgender people are the purest thing that we have on earth to God, because the way that God said that he created them male and female in their image, then they would use they would twist the scripture to use that to say that transgender people are the purest thing that we have on earth next to God. Pastors. That was the most shocking. In Texas, in Austin, Texas, at the Capitol.
We're not talking about Vermont with Bernie, or Maine, or Cuomo's people in New York, Texas.
That's right. And so that's when I talk to people about what we're facing in education in Texas. They think when we talk about these issues, we're talking about, New York, LA, Chicago, San Francisco, but they have to realize it's here. It's now. It's in our schools now. So the urgency is here because as Texas goes, so goes the whole nation.
No question.
So that's why the urgency now to get this right here in the great state of Texas.
We fight child sex trafficking. We have for a very long time. My sister is a survivor, amazing, but we have. And so by default, and people are perplexed. I mean, I'm doing a function next week, and I can guarantee you, it's some of the who's who of Dallas. They're going to sit and say, no, come on, Jaco. Kids are not being trafficked in Dallas. I mean, it blows my mind that still today they don't know. But then when I start daisy chain connecting sex trafficking to porn, sex trafficking to abortion, sex trafficking to comprehensive sex ed, sex trafficking to CRT, and I start connecting it for them, and I say, listen, trafficking a child for sex is a symptom. There's a root that's way upstream. We need to start looking at root. They're coming at our children from every angle. Mm-hmm. My opinion, you can either verify or disagree, please, if you want to. They're going after girls. There's not so much talk about girls and boy sport, okay?
Right.
A little bit, but not the avalanche of trans, boys who are trans going to girls sport in the Olympics. In swimming, we saw the trans athlete breaking every single NCAA record.
That's right.
Right? It's an attack on women. When you look at pornography, predominantly, we're sexualizing women. We're breaking the image of women. This is anti-women's rights.
It is.
100%.
What we were seeing happen in the state of Texas by boys participating in girls' sports is we were seeing Title IX completely undone. Right? It was the undoing of Title IX. And so many women, that's how they earn their way to go to college to achieve the American dream. They work hard to earn the scholarships and, starting in junior high to high school to be able to go to college. And we're at the precipice of robbing our female athletes that opportunity that they have worked so hard to earn.
A pedophile uses a tactic. So force, fraud, coercion. We don't have to prove force, fraud, coercion when we try a case in court when it's 17 and under, but they still use force, fraud, coercion. Now, they're defrauding girls by robbing them of future, because now you have a 6-year-old girl, and if her parents or her community or her school buys into the notion that a boy can come in, trans, I don't care, someone with a major advantage.
That's right.
Of a different gender, because I'm a 2-gender guy, okay, can come into her sport. You're robbing her of her hopes and dreams. Now, what if God created that child, because I believe every single human being was created, and he created that child an athlete. And that child's name is Serena Williams at 7, okay? And Mr. Williams, coach, father, wonder if you roll the clock back, way back, if he would say, well, listen, Roger Federer, kind of the same age, can come play Serena at age 12 and take her scholarship. Mm-hmm. We need to break it down to people to where, can Serena beat Roger today? Not possible. Can she beat Djokovic? Not possible.
Right.
Okay. So where do people, the mindset, for me, it's like psychosis.
Right. So even in my own school district, we saw that. In my own school district, we had the number one marathon runner in the state of Texas in my own school district who went on to try out for the U.S. Olympic team. But there were boys in my district that could break her records all day, every day. And so if we would have allowed male athletes into her field, then she never would have been able to try out for the Olympics because she never would have had the rankings within the state to qualify.
Yeah, and we're not even now, we're talking about, Dana White's well quoted in this. I mean, and Dana, look, there's a reason the UFC is doing well, okay? Because they are holding true to some American values. But Dana's going, come on, are you out of your mind? You want to come put, a female fighter in the octagon with a male? Now it gets dangerous. Absolutely. There's some sports where now actually you're talking about you're going to threaten livelihoods. Right?
Absolutely. It's
one thing to say, go run track. Okay, tennis. It's an embarrassment. It's degrading, all that kind of stuff. And it's unfair, right? It's unfair. But there's sports where...
Sure, wrestling.
Come on. Boxing, you put your life... I mean, this is insane. It's insanity, right? And so for me, it's a psychosis. So then again, I say, it's a symptom. It's a symptom. What's the root cause? Why? Why attack women's rights and women's freedom like it. Why go after kids? And for me, the why I have found is they will use any mechanism, sport, art, I don't care, music. They'll do anything they can to break America's children. Because if they do, and they sexualize them, and sex is always a part of it.
That's right.
Always. Because it's the most lethal weapon on earth. If they sexualize a child, that child will not, when he or she is 21, 22, 23, fight for his or for her First Amendment right, Second Amendment right, will fight for this free nation. That child will become a dependent of, fill in the blank, the state, a pedophile, a pimp, will live to survive. Because survivors from trafficking, kids who are being molested and abused, they literally, when they're victims, they live to survive. It is survival mode. And we're breaking, in my opinion, a whole class, a whole generation that will not defend this nation. They won't be able to because they'll be so compromised emotionally,
right.
Sexually. They're so hurt, so damaged that they're not going to be on the front lines, raising the flag, holding the flag up when the bombs are coming. Right? And so that's my real issue. Is it's a mechanism for me, for the radicals on, in that ideology, to drive this nation to its knees.
Yeah, so I'll take a personal story from all my time in Austin sitting through all this testimony. So another driving force in the testimony that we saw in the transgender bill were many parents who brought their little 5, 6, 7-year-old boys dressed as little girls that came to testify before our legislators, before our lawmakers, saying that their little boys are little girls. And so, I spent a lot of time in Austin. It was away from my family, and I have 2 little boys. So during the summer, I would rotate bringing my children with me so that they could see what happens and, see what I do and what
does mom do?
And so I brought my 10-year-old little son with me to one of the public hearings. And so he starts pulling on my shoulder, and he says, Mommy, go get the police. I said, why, baby? What's wrong? He's like, Mommy, go get a police officer. And I said, well, baby, there's a DPS officer standing right in front of us. What's wrong? Like, I'm thinking something's wrong. He's like, Mommy, go arrest that man. That man is making his little boy be a little girl. So to my 10-year-old son, it's so obvious that, it's wrong to make a child be something that they are not.
Yeah. Well, look, it also always starts with a question. When you ask a child, are you? Now you're planting a seed that now if someone waters that seed, it's going to grow. I want to take a real brief break. But before we do, I'm going to ask Becca. Becca, can you pull up Caitlyn Jenner yesterday wrote an Instagram post on this very issue. I want to come back on that. Listen, I want to tell everybody, check out Patriot Mobile, 972-PATRIOT, and type in the code bottom line. Go get a free activation. It's the only conservative Christian cell phone provider in our nation, maybe in the world. And they use all the major towers. You're going to get great service. And above all that, these are phenomenal people. Glenn and his team are amazing guys. I know them personally. They help us bring this show and these topics to you. So Patriot Mobile, 972-PATRIOT. Type in the promo code bottom line, which is the show. That's where you are. You are at the bottom line because we're going to get down to the bottom line with you, Julie. Okay, let's look at this on the screen. That's Caitlyn. Bruce transferred to Caitlyn, an Olympian, a medalist, someone who knows a little bit about competition, right? And let's read this. This woke world that we're living in right now is not working. Agreed. I feel sorry for the other athletes that are out there. What we don't see is at the bottom of that Instagram post, and people can go see it, Caitlyn tags the NCAA and says, NCAA, I hope you do the right thing by girl athletes.
Yes, I had the opportunity to speak with Caitlyn at CPAC in Dallas last year. We had a long conversation about this. And Caitlyn is definitely in favor of our sports bill.
Right? 100%. Because this is an athlete. Not that it's important, but I had a long professional sporting career, and I can just tell you, and my wife was a world-class junior Olympic track and field athlete. I can just tell you, there's no question. And so for me, whenever somebody willingly lies to themselves and buys into that, like these pastors, lawmakers on the left and the right, because just share briefly that bill was also hard to pass because there was opposition from within the conservative
absolutely. Inside of the Republican Party, it was all the threats from businesses and chambers of commerce threatening to leave Texas or, not to do business in Texas again. And so We went through 3 sessions with this bill. The first general session, and then 2 special sessions, and it kept getting killed in committee. A bill is filed and then it's assigned to a committee, and if it's voted out of committee, then it can go to the House floor to be voted on by the entire body. Okay, and so what happened was we kept getting to the Public Education Committee, which is chaired by Harold Dutton from Houston, and they kept killing the bill on procedures. And so the last time in the second special session, Harold Dutton, we're literally at the vote. We know we have the votes to get it out of committee so we can get it to the floor to vote. And Harold Dutton literally picks up his gavel and gavels out like 30 seconds before the vote and says, "I'm taking this for the team, meeting adjourned." So they were never going to let it out of committee. And so,
but see, I don't know that people know this. And the general average American, I don't know that and this is not to be disparaging to anybody, but it's just we have busy lives and they don't know, they're in politics, that they understand the process and how many hurdles there are where people can kill a bill, where they can literally coerce and lobby as they do.
Oh, absolutely.
And just coerce both sides of the aisle and just kill it. And it never even goes to the floor for a vote.
Oh, yeah. A bill can be killed in assignment to which committee it's assigned to. A bill can be killed just in running the clock, running out of time. It can be killed when it goes to calendars. They can run the time in calendars and let it never even get on calendars to go to a floor vote. There's a lot of ways a bill can be killed. And that bill,
you reassigned it, right? It got reassigned
to a different
committee.
Yes, so thank goodness we met with the Speaker, Dade Phelan, and he agreed to send it to a different committee after 3 times getting killed in Public Education Committee. He agreed to send it to the new committee, Constitutional Remedies Committee. And in that committee, they let it go to a vote, voted out of committee, went to the House floor. But again, that was pretty wild when we got to the House floor. So as a Christian, we knew that we were in a spiritual warfare and that we had to change the atmosphere. So there were many wonderful people involved. A lot of our Hispanic pastors, Martha Fierro, Richard Vega, Pastor Margarita in Brazoria County. A lot of our wonderful Hispanic pastors from our Hispanic communities, they came together because they understand how our girls needed to be protected. And they actually brought a praise team to the Capitol on the day of the vote. And so from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock that evening, our praise team played in the rotunda, and it changed the whole atmosphere. And if you haven't been to the Capitol, the way the rotunda is set up in our beautiful Capitol in Austin is that you can hear the sounds kind of echoing all throughout the building. So you could hear the praise music, and it changed the whole atmosphere. So then what happened was about 6 o'clock, Martha Fierro, she said, "Julie, my teens were tired, right? We're hungry, we're tired. We want to go back to the hotel." I said, "That's fine, no problem." So they weren't even gone 15 minutes. And then here comes people from the Satanic Temple in Austin. And so the people from the Satanic Temple in Austin, they come into the rotunda and they start doing everything they do with, worshiping Satan, coming into the gallery, trying to put hexes and curses on us. I mean, I know this sounds so far-fetched, but this really is reality of what happened.
But people need to understand, when we talk politics in this country, the day where it was I believe it should be, right? I'm a term limits guy, where the farmer is also the politician, like our founding fathers. They raised a family, they farmed the land. Those days are so gone. This is career politics. This is brutal blood sport. It is spiritual warfare, and it's important that people know that. But isn't it interesting, though, that it gets killed in the Education Committee, okay? Right? Why is the Education Committee? They should be worried about kids' education and not necessarily, but it passes in the Constitutional Committee.
That's right.
Right?
Yes, constitutional remedies.
Right. So let's talk education for a second, because we have fought very hard against comprehensive sex ed. You fought very hard against CRT. Comprehensive sex ed, part of our job in fighting sex trafficking is we need to see the enemy coming. And then we need to warn. That's Ezekiel 33, watchman on the wall. So we start tracking this thing in Europe. And I start seeing that the World Health Organization, and maybe Becca, if you can pull up the World Health Organization, I got a clip here of the World Health Organization authoring, a sexual manifesto for the world's youth. Okay? World Health Organization, WHO, in the middle of COVID, by the way. And they don't do it by themselves. They pull in SICUS. Mm-hmm. Okay? Right. We're going to talk SICUS here.
We are going to talk SICUS.
We're going to talk SICUS because parents don't know. They pull in Planned Parenthood. They pull in UNESCO, which is the youth arm for the United Nations. And so SICUS, UNESCO, World Health Organization, and Planned Parenthood write a sexual manifesto for the world's youth. It's not a curriculum, right? They leave that little plausible deniability. This is a manifesto.
Right.
But they cite Alfred Kinsey, Judith Reisman, rest in peace, amazing, Liberty University, great school. They cite Kinsey's work, who as a pedophile molesting 6-week-old boys 24 hours a day, trying to see how many orgasms they can get. This is Alfred Kinsey. He was hailed as the scientist of the decade by our sitting president back then. We made movies about this guy, okay? Everything we have with sexual revolution in the 60s comes from Kinsey. It's all from Kinsey. So they take Kinsey's work in the World Health Organization, for SICAS, Planned Parenthood, UNESCO, and they write this manifesto. They take it to Africa. We track it in Africa, and they indoctrinate children who has nobody that fights for them. Nobody. An African child does well to stay alive. There's no campaign. There's no Julie that's going to go knock on the door of the president of Uganda or Nigeria or Cameroon and say, hey, can we take care of Samuel in the jungle? No, they just sexually indoctrinate these kids and they show success. Then they come to the U.S. Okay? Becca, pull that up when you can. But they come to the U.S. and they look for a single suitor. And I announced it before they came. They're coming. It's coming. They took it to Scotland, unilaterally brought in comprehensive sex ed. So they wrote a curriculum, right? On the screen, Becca's going to open. This is their website, World Health Organization. WHO recommendations on adolescent sexual and reproductive health and rights. And it sounds good. It really sounds good. But the book that comes from it is this book called It's Perfectly Normal, okay, which is a page you'll see in a minute. I'll ask Becca to pull that up next. So they create It's Perfectly Normal. Again, it sounds good. It's porn. It's 100% porn, right? They look for a suitor in the U.S., a governor that says, I'll be first. Gavin Newsom signs it by executive order without the California State Board of Education voting on it. Okay? Signs it unilaterally into law in the state of California. Within 2 weeks after him, Governor Inslee in Washington signs it into law, and it spreads like wildfire through the U.S. because that's how politics work. You get a bill passed, man, you run it to every country.
That's right.
This is the book. It's Perfectly Normal. This is where it all started. Now, after that, we had other books like Lawn Boy, What's Happening to My Body for Boys.
The Genderbread Man.
Genderbread Man is in here.
Mm-hmm.
The Genderbread Man is basically a gingerbread cookie, a genderbread man, and then you pin sexual orientation onto the genderbread man. Becca, if you can pull up the genderbread man image, and so it'll be up in a second. And so Gavin Newsom signs it into law. Now your child is being indoctrinated at age 10 in the classroom. There's the genderbread man. There you pin up, and this is an article, another reason to ditch the World Health Organization is its shocking sex propaganda for kids. This is real, guys. Okay, this is April 2020. All right, in the middle of COVID. How ironic. Parents can't go protest.
Right.
Parents can't go line up like you at their state capitals. They're locked down.
Right.
Very strategic, right?
Right.
And they start indoctrinating kids. And now, as we know, and I'll pause here, it's all the way down to kindergarten. Okay.
Right.
So comprehensive sex ed. I want to switch from the sports bill into the attack on our kids in the classroom, sexualizing kids in the classroom, tying all these organizations together. So let's just go for the jugular. Let's go for SICAS. Talk SICAS for me, please.
So SICAS is an organization put together for sexual education in the United States, but its board is made up of members of the National School Board Association. I think your viewers, their listeners and parents probably understand the NSBA, right? They're the ones who asked President Biden and Merrick Garland to use the Patriot Act against parents and to mobilize Homeland Security and the FBI against parents who show up to school board meetings to talk about things like this and critical race theory. So it's a partnership between the NSBA and Planned Parenthood. So you have an organization that believes that parents who are involved in education are domestic terrorists, basically. And then you have an organization Right. We all know Planned Parenthood. I don't think I have to describe that to anybody, right? The evilness and the wickedness that lies there. So then you have these two organizations coming together to write SECUS, which is the proponent for the National Sexuality Education Standards, which are being adopted by a lot of school districts in Texas. So again, this isn't something that Chicago, New York, LA, San Francisco, right? This is not out there. This is here. We have several school districts in Texas that have already adopted.
Austin.
Yes, Austin's one of them.
Yeah.
Houston.
Unfortunately, the superintendent of the ISD can opt in.
Yes.
Yeah, even if the state board of education says, "Hey, we're not going to unilaterally do this," each independent school board superintendent can say, "In our district, we're going to teach this."
Right, because each local governing board is a completely independent governing body. So they can take recommendations from the State Board of Education, but then they also can adopt their own curriculum and their own standards. But that's what's important at the State Board of Education, that we block health textbooks and sex ed books that reflect the National Sexuality Education Standards in that book. And which, by the way, that was just the last meeting of the State Board of Education. That was the meeting that we just had. And I can tell you, we missed sex ed through Quaver Education. We missed sex ed in elementary by one vote. There was one vote in Texas. There was one vote in the state of Texas. SBOE member Will Hickman voted against it on the Friday, on the last day of the meeting of the State Board of Education. So we missed having sexual education in elementary by one vote.
By the state.
Yes.
But the independent school districts still voted in. But you're talking about, this is just, I want to pause there for a second and just have people I know it's a lot of information. You got to move fast in the show. We're going to get, these are bottom line issues, but just hear what Julie is saying. Texas, one vote in a very conservative court. Yes. No matter where you go in Texas, okay?
That's right.
It's strongly conservative courts, right? And if we can equate conservatism with these kind of issues on a healthy spectrum, because both sides of the aisle, look, I always say this, you can't politicize these issues. It's children.
That's right. And they don't have a voice. Let me tell you, when I'm in Austin, when I'm working on these bills for education, nobody's paying me, okay? It's on my own time, my own money. I'm not a lobbyist for anybody, okay? It is just me working for what I think is best for 5.5 million children, protecting 5.5 million children from the onslaught of this liberal left indoctrination. And so when I'm in Austin, there are a lot of lobbyists for the left, okay?
Yeah,
there's a lot of paid lobbyists for NSES, for NASB, for TASB. There's a lot of paid lobbyists for this. There's nobody paid. Children do not have the resources to hire a lobbyist to say, hey, will you stand up for me so that I don't have to be taught because of my skin color that I'm a victim or I'm an oppressor. If children don't have the money to put together to say, hey, you know what? I'm only 7 years old. I don't want to be taught about sex education. I don't want to be taught how to pick what preferred gender I want to be or what preferred pronoun I want to be. Children don't have a voice because they can't pay lobbyists. But there are very big organizations, some organizations we've already talked about, that have a lot of money to pay for lobbyists to inflict this liberal indoctrination onto our children.
Yeah, look, we're talking about, and again, Texas, but it's all over. We fight this all over. I've done a lot of work in Minnesota. Oh my goodness. I mean, Ilhan Omar territory. I mean, it's insane. You know, colleges, Oklahoma, all over this country. We fight in all 50 states, and we fight this, and it's an evil, and it's an attack, and it's very coordinated, very coordinated. When you look at that, and Becca, while I'm doing this, can you pull up Gavin Newsom's bill? I think it's 2119 in California. I want to talk about that bill. When you look at sex trafficking, the amount of children are being trafficked in America, that it is domestic, and then you look at how many lawmakers stand by, how few cases go to court, very few. Out of the 250 plus counties in Texas, we only prosecute 10.
Right.
10, right? And we're the best in the country.
And we have Houston that is one of the top two.
Top two. When you look at laws in New York now, when you caught sexualizing a child, abusing, raping a child, that predator gets fingerprinted and is released the same day with no bail, does not register to the sex offender list. So you got to tie all these things together and say, well, wait a minute. They're not frowning upon sex trafficking. They're not. And then you find out, 13 states are trying to push the age of consent down to 14. Of course, they're going to sexualize children at 10 years old, and now all the way down to teaching masturbation in kindergarten.
Right.
Talking again, and I say this, when you just bring a concept to a child, think about a 7-year-old in kindergarten, a 5-year-old, and you just say, hey, masturbation as a concept. You don't need to do much else. You've now, again, planted a seed. All that child, and we have a real case of a real 10-year-old in this state that went to school, and the concept of anal sex was discussed in the classroom by an authority figure, which is an adult, right? And trafficking's familiar. That child went home, had never heard about anal sex in his life, and typed in anal sex on YouTube. Now here comes Section 230. And you type in anal sex on YouTube, and it's gang rape.
Right.
It's gang rape. So that child's first introduction to sex that was designed by God for a husband and wife to become one, right, is gang rape. So forget about him ever respecting or honoring women, or understanding love, the purpose of intimacy. He got hooked on porn. He was a porn addict by 12 because he gets free porn. Here comes Section 230. This is why we talk, all this stuff is connected. So it's a very proactive, multi-pronged attack.
That's right.
On children.
And so to say to that, Jaco, so I tell parents all the time, you need to watch what is happening in these very liberal states. You need to watch what's happening in California, what's happening in New York, what's happening in Chicago, because that is the playbook for what they planned for here. Yep. And so the worst thing that can happen is that we get caught without knowing, that we get caught off guard. And you're right. In California, there's already been several instances where daycares have been instructed to have manual stimulation of children.
Yes.
And daycares.
Daycare. So you drop your child off because you're a mom and a dad in California. I don't care if you're a liberal. Honestly, I don't care. You can believe that the Smurfs should be president and running the White House. I really don't care when it comes to children. We have a duty, all of us, to protect the innocent. If we don't, that blood is on our hands, 100%, right?
That's right.
Look at the screen. This is the actual bill. So it's Assembly Bill 2119. I want people to look it up by Gavin Newsom, okay? And at the bottom, just the first paragraph of this bill, I just want you to see this, and then I'm going to walk it back for you. This is Gavin Newsom. He signs this. The people of the state of California do enact as follows. Now, hold on. He never consulted the people, okay? Becca, can you go to, while I'm talking to Julie, the news article by the Los Angeles Times? LA Times, liberal. It's not conservative. People say, Jaco, you're conservative. I go, no.
Right.
Let me show you how dangerous this is, okay? This is California Family Council. We'll start with this one first. California bill forces puberty blocking drugs / sex change operations on foster kids. This is the California Family Council, okay?
Right. And look at the year. That's 2018.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's already progressed from here. We're already
it's enacted.
4 years.
It's enacted, and people don't even know that it's happening. That bill, there's another article on that bill, but that bill 2119 that Becca just pulled up, that bill allows age 12 and under down to 3-year-old in California today to get puberty blockers. Now, here's what happens. If a teacher in a classroom asks Susie, are you a girl? Are you sure you're a girl? And this happens every day in the classrooms, right? And Susie goes, I don't know, I think so. They come in, and what happens by that bill is the child gets what's called sexual agency over her or his body. The parent loses control. Planned Parenthood gets called in. The child gets an option by the Los Angeles Children's Hospital and Planned Parenthood to get a puberty blocker at 3 in California.
Without parental consent.
Parent can stop it.
Wow.
They will come after the parent. CPS will take that child, right? The puberty blocker of choice is a drug called Luprin. Luprin is a drug for men with prostate cancer that sterilizes them. There's well-documented proof that drug,
what wickedness,
even when you go to Los Angeles Children's Hospital today and you say, I want a puberty blocker for my child, the document, if a parent does that at will, right? The document that parent signs says high risk of sterilization, permanent sterilization. Now Susie is 15, right? She's now had puberty blockers, and she realizes, you know what? I want to be a mommy. Sorry, no can do. No can do, because a teacher by by the evil government got given a right to take some sick notion and alter the chemistry. You're a woman, your thyroid, your hormones. It is vitally important.
Absolutely.
Vitally important for a menstrual cycle, ovulation cycle, growth, everything down to the bone density, everything about you, right? When you start playing God with that at 3, 4, 5, 7, and you say, parent, you have no right anymore. We're the state.
That's right.
Right?
So we're kind of already seeing a little bit of that in Texas. So we have one of our largest school districts in Texas that took their part of their ESSER 3 fund, which, by the way, was the largest federal funding of public schools in Texas ever in the history of our state.
I'm so glad you're going to talk money. Let's talk money. Yes.
Well,
Go.
So they took a big portion of their ESSER 3 funds to hire gender affirmation counselors for elementary, junior high, and high school.
What's the purpose of that fund?
The ESSER 3 funds. Yeah. So that was to provide offset for school districts from COVID, right? All the extra expenses from COVID, right?
Okay, so it's funds supposed to be dedicated to support whatever is offset from COVID.
That's right.
But instead, they take the funds and they hire what?
Gender affirmation counselors.
What does that have to do with COVID?
Not a thing. Not a thing. So that's what we see. That's
taxpayer dollar?
Taxpayer dollars. That's your dollars, my dollars, everybody's listening's dollars. That's taxpayer dollars. So then what they do is they take the gender affirmation counselors, and it's similar to what you're saying. If a child says, I really feel like I'm a boy, if a girl says, I feel like I'm a boy, or a boy says, I feel like I'm a girl, well, then they're immediately referred to a gender affirmation counselor. And then that gender affirmation counselor puts that child into contact with a lot of different organizations to walk them through the process.
But the organization don't come sit in front of the child and say, can we lay both sides of the coin down for you?
Right.
No, it's one-sided. It is like pulling a child into a river, and it's affirmation, it's affirming what they want to affirm.
Right. And the thing is, Jaco, is, how in the world did we get to a point where we let a little 5 or 6-year-old child decide what they want to be for the rest of their life? I mean, if a 6-year-old child woke up one morning and said, Mommy, I really don't like my arm. Can we go cut my arm off today? That's child abuse. Right.
Or I don't like my friend. My friend shouldn't be here. Or I want to be a firefighter. And all of a sudden, no, that's it.
Yeah. My little boys, when they're little, they want to be dinosaurs.
Yep. That's it. We're going to grow you a tail.
Right.
Get you some scales, tattoo some horns on you, and all of a sudden, off you go.
Right.
It's insanity.
It is.
Which is why I'm saying there's a psychosis going on.
And to let a child who emotionally, brain development has not happened, emotional development has not happened, to let them decide something that is so life-altering, to let a little girl decide, at such a young age, I want to be a boy, and then enters into all the puberty blockers and then the surgeries, what have you, and that she's making that decision at 5, 6, 7 years old. But she'll never be able to have children, right?
That's right.
If she decides that like you said, when she's 15, 16, 17 years old, though, okay, maybe that wasn't the right decision while I was in kindergarten. I really want to, I like boys now. I want to have relationships and get married one day. But she's permanently altered her whole life.
But the hypocrisy, right? The very same groups that are saying you should be able to choose take choice away.
Right.
We're going to give you a puberty blocker that's going to permanently sterilize you. So now where's the right to choose at 15? Oh, I want to be a girl again. Sorry, no choose. On the screen, people say, Jaco, LA Times, very liberal. Here it is. So at the same time when Gavin Newsom passes this insane law, controversial sex ed framework for California approved despite protest. Here's what happens. When parents show up, and here's an image, too much too soon, the framework is mind corrupting, right? AB 3219, and people should go look at it. Bad laws, et cetera, sick and it's twisted. Okay, here's what always happens. By the time parents find out, and by the time the troops are rallied, this is why we're doing this show with you today. It's pre-burn. It's to get way upstream and say, it's coming. If it's not in your kid's classroom yet, don't wait for it to show up. Go fight now.
Right.
I went to the Frisco School Board. I don't have a kid in Frisco. I got on the docket. I got 2 minutes, and I said, it's coming, and I'm watching you. And I will make it public that you want to sexualize children. And the whole board was like up in arms, like, wait a minute. We're not even voting on comprehensive. I said, not yet.
Right.
Not yet, but
Because
I'm coming.
it's
I'm watching you.
much easier to prevent it
Of course.
than it is to have to go through and rip it out once it's already here, because it permeates all throughout education, right? So it's much easier to do what we're doing and to shine the light on it to prevent it than it is to have to pass legislation.
Well, remedy.
to
I'm
eradicate
just
it.
saying, when you give the pinky, they take the arm. It's so hard to get it back. And unfortunately, very, very sad. Very, very sad. Some of the things they're doing, not just emotionally, some of it is irreversible, other by God in therapy, but there's physical irreversible things. I'm going to ask Becca to pull up an image, and just a disclosure here. We're going to get real on this show. This is a disturbing image. It's very disturbing, very. And I do not do this to exploit, but I must share truth. I must. And so I'm going to ask you to pull an image up of a doctor who's doing things to a child. Okay, it's tough, and I want you to talk. I want us to look at this, and then I want you to walk us through this. What's going on the screen here?
So the first time I saw this picture, I mean, literally, it broke my heart. This is a 13-year-old girl who has chosen to be a boy, who's chosen to go through the gender affirmation and the whole transgender surgery. This is what's called a top surgery. So this is a 13-year-old girl. This is a doctor in Houston. And this doctor, my understanding is this doctor is booked 6 months in advance to do these surgeries, has a 6-month waiting list to do surgeries. So this is a 13-year-old girl who chose to have a double mastectomy to start the transition to being a boy. So, I mean, this image.
And you've got an individual.
It's horrific.
That went through medical school, somewhere lost her mind, that believes that this is a victory. This is some sick satisfaction for this, if I can call it a doctor. I mean, I guess I should, because there's a degree, right? This is sick.
Mm-hmm. This is horrific.
Booked out 6 months. And again, people, this is Houston, Texas.
Right.
This is the last bastion. Texas is the last bastion.
Right.
Thank you, Tennessee, for fighting volunteer state. I love you. Thank you, Kentucky. Thank you, Oklahoma. But I'm telling you, so goes Texas, so goes this nation. And we are decimating our youth. Absolutely. We're losing our future. We are not a country if we don't have children Elon Musk, for crying out loud, as liberal as Elon can be, and he's a fellow South African, said, we better start having more children. There's a problem here, right? There's societal catastrophes going on at the moment, and it's not just COVID. Okay, this is like under our noses.
Yes. So this is one of the testimonies that actually came out when we were working on the transgender sports bill. We're working on the Protect Girls sports bill, keeping males out of female sports. So this is part of the testimony that came out. But, you're right. We're seeing it here in Texas. And as Texas goes, so goes the nation, right? So we have to shine the light on this now. We have to raise awareness to this now, that, the fact that we have 7 different school districts in Texas that have adopted the national sexuality education standards, that are actively, kindergarten through 12th grade sex ed, sexualizing our children. It's here. The fight is here. The fight is now. And we need our parents. And if any great thing came out of COVID, the great thing that came out of COVID was that children were at home doing their schoolwork.
And parents could see.
And parents saw what's happening.
That's why teachers' unions went on strike. We don't want to teach when the parent can see what we're teaching.
Right.
Because they know it's wrong.
You know what happens? I'm a Texan, born and raised in Texas. Okay. I'm a very proud Texan. I love my state. But what happens is people go through these schools generationally. And so they think the elementary school, the junior high, the high school that they went to, that their parents went to, that their grandparents went to, they think the education has stayed the same. But they don't understand that what's been happening very quietly behind the scenes, because there has been so much trust between parents and their local schools. They do not understand of all the liberal agenda that has infiltrated through different superintendents and through different school boards, right? It's not your same board that was running it 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so we need parents to really pay attention and question and we need transparency between the classrooms and between the parents. And Representative Steve Toth had a wonderful bill last legislative session. I hope he brings it back, but it provides full transparency between what's happening in the classroom for the parent to see that 30 days before a subject is taught, all materials used to teach that subject must be made available online to parents.
Okay, hold on. Pause. This is so important. Pause. And I don't know if Becca can pull this up or find it. Whose bill is this?
Representative Steve Toth.
So Steve Toth, Texas transparency bill.
Yes.
If I Google, Becca, see if you can find anything on that, because this is how.
Yes, we fix it. That's right.
This is how. Where people now say, okay, well, that bill makes sense. That's what my tax dollar is supposed to go fund. Get behind that bill. Demand that it gets passed. And when it's passed, all of a sudden there's transparency. Because in 1970, while Becca's trying to pull that up, in 1970, the obscenity exemption statute got passed. Okay? People go, well, Jaco, what's that? It is the foundation of everything we're talking about. Because in 1970, law enforcement said, well, wait a minute. You can't criminalize us when we look at images of a naked child at a crime scene. When we look at, genital mutilation images by a parent on a child, right? It's obscene material, right? It's a felony, right? So you have to pass a statute where we can look at that. Then the medical community said, well, you have to include us in that statute. And very quickly, the education community and the arts community said, yes, this is why you can have an image of an actual picture of a naked woman, porn, in a museum, and it's not obscene. You take the picture off the wall, you walk out of the museum into the street, and it's a felony.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If you show that to a child. But now education is in there, so they slip it into the curriculum. Porn, illustrated, whatever, right? Porn. And I'm going to show you now, it's slang they teach the kids. People don't know how important legislators are. They don't understand that the laws that get made, they have long-term ramifications, and they build on them. It's building blocks. So they lay a foundation like Gavin Newsom, and then they bolt on. And they will lie to the people. They'll say, like, for instance, funds for COVID, but it's funding, gender affirmation. Or they'll say it's, in California, that bill that got passed earlier got passed not as a puberty blocking bill. It got passed as a health care bill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Under LBGT healthcare.
Oh, absolutely. They can package things very well and put a beautiful bow on it that makes it look like, oh, this is a good thing. And it's not a good thing.
Becca's working on that. So can you talk to me a little bit? Before the show we talked, I really want to talk money.
Okay.
The misappropriation of money. Committees, funds that are supposed to go this way and it goes that way. There are funds available to do certain things in education that you shared with me that's either not being used or being misappropriated, in addition to what you shared before. Can you just do a brain dump for us on
asking me to do a brain dump on education funding? We're going to be here a little bit, but I can sum it up pretty neatly for you. Okay, so you have two mechanisms that fund schools in Texas. You have your local ISD property taxes, right? Every year we write a check for our property taxes, okay? The state collects roughly about $8.5 billion in ISD property taxes every year. About $6 billion of that, maybe a little bit north of $6 billion since House Bill 3 in the 86 legislature passed, but a little bit north of $6 billion is what actually goes towards schools. The rest of that money is applied towards the state's general fund. So I always tell people all the time, you're writing a lot of money in ISD property taxes, but that money is not necessarily staying in your school district or even staying in education. So that's important for parents to understand. The other thing that we have in the state of Texas that funds education is what's called the Permanent School Fund. Yeah. Now, the Permanent School Fund actually is managed by the State Board of Education and in cooperation with the Land Office. And so the PSF, the Permanent School Fund, is about a $50 billion fund. And what
in Texas?
In Texas alone. And what feeds that fund is the royalties from the oil and gas leases that the state owns. Now, the state owns the oil and gas leases all the way 9 miles out of the coastline,
into the ocean.
into the ocean. So when you see all those platforms and rigs and everything, they are also paying into the permanent school fund. So the permanent school fund currently is used to provide funding for some of our universities and community colleges. But the main purpose of it right now is it's being used to guarantee the debt that the local ISDs are going after. So when you have a school district that's, passing $1 billion bond or $1.5 billion bond, I can't believe I'm saying these numbers now. It's all right, such huge numbers. You would never think this in a million years. But when you have a school district, $1 billion bond is becoming normal in the state of Texas. It's actually the permanent school fund that's guaranteeing that debt.
The taxpayer.
The taxpayer. So, yes, so we need to look at, I have a plan, I'm running for State Board of Education.
Yes.
So I have a plan to help offset property taxes using the permanent school fund, because I don't believe, as a financial conservative, I do not believe that we need these huge funds that basically our savings account with our money, right? The property tax load is very heavy in the state of Texas. People are losing their homes because of property taxes.
Absolutely.
And so we have $50 billion set aside for education. And I just think there's a great opportunity to use that funding to offset our property taxes.
What's it being used for today?
Primarily to guarantee school bond debt.
Okay, so school districts are incurring debt that the taxpayer didn't vote on. That's basically a blank checkbook for debt, right? And the taxpayer is underwriting the debt, right, through this fund. Meanwhile, you're saying we can use that fund to actually go make change in inner city schools where we know that poor school districts are tied to low property taxes. In that district, it's almost impossible to pull a school district out of the class it's in without affecting property taxes.
Yes.
That's why inner city and historically Black communities, it's so difficult.
That's right. And so, Jaco, we see that. So, people have asked me, I've been in education. I've been elected in education for the past 6 years. Okay. So I've served a lot of great people, a lot of great taxpayers and children for the last 6 years already in education. And so, people ask me all the time, Julie, what's the difference between this school district that is just, 2 miles north of us? Why do we have a 99% graduation rate and a school district 2 miles north of us has an 80% graduation rate? What's the difference? And so we have all kinds of data that shows that deficiency in education is not so much due to the color of a child's skin. It's due to their economic background. Poor children, they need a choice, right?
Absolutely.
If you are a single mom who's working 2 jobs just to get food on the table, you cannot think about, my husband and I are very blessed, you and your wife, right? So we moved to pick what schools we wanted our children to go to, right? But there's a lot of people in Texas that do not have that option. Yeah. They are working so hard just to make sure they have food on the table at night and clean clothes for their children to wear to school that they can't even begin to think about. Their mind can't even begin to have that conversation to think about, maybe I'll move to pick a better school for my child. And so it is wrong. It is wrong morally that we are trapping poor families into failing schools, that child will never have a chance at a great education, so that they have just as much right to achieve their American dream as my kids do, as your kids do, as any children do. And it is morally wrong that we are trapping children into failing school systems just because of their economic class.
There's so much I want to say about this. Oh my goodness. I know you're an LSU fan, and I'm going to bring a little levity. We're going to get back to this.
Go Tigers.
But, go Tigers. You can't have it, but I at least bring it for you. He's an LSU Tiger. This ball was given to me by, I'll leave his name out the show, but let's say that the number one batter in LSU's history is a dear friend. And so, but also we got this year. This is a way out for so many poor kids. Football. Right? Let's talk football just for a second. The left, who do not want school choice, who do not want us to be able to use that mechanism, they'll very easily make a show that's called All-American. It's streaming all over. And it's a show about a boy that lives on the wrong side of Los Angeles. And the coach from the Beverly Hills High School comes and recruits him against the law, breaks protocol.
Right.
And it literally depicts how his life changes and transforms when he goes to Beverly Hills and he's in that school, and then he makes the choice to go back and pour back into his community. But the notion is not a foreign notion to them that if school choice was to exist, that you could literally lift a child out of poverty to his or her potential. Because this is the United States of America. It's not India where, no, sorry, son, you're in that class.
Right.
And you can't graduate out of your class.
Yes, praise God, we do not have a class system.
Well,
and education,
in a way, we kind of do in education.
Well,
right?
Education is the great disruptor.
It should be.
Education is the vehicle that lets anybody, no matter where they're from. You know, in my school district, we had the honor of naming one of our new junior highs after the astronaut McNair. Okay, so if you don't know his story, he actually, as a child, because of the color of his skin, he was blocked from going to the public library. So he sat outside on the doorsteps all day long because he was a poor Black child in America. Right? He sat on the steps all day long and read a book that he had, hoping that they would let him into the library to get a new book. And then he went to MIT, earned his doctorate for space technology from MIT. His story radically changed. And praise God, education was the great disruptor for him. And so, that's what we have to do. We have to look at our poor neighborhoods, at our minority neighborhoods, and we have to bring school choice to them, because it is just wrong that a child is trapped to a school district that has an 80% graduation rate. I mean, you have to think about this. A child starting kindergarten, are they going to go and tell the parents of 20% of the children who are starting kindergarten and say, I'm sorry, we're never going to educate your child for them to be successful?
No, but here's the deal. I work with Jack Brewer. Here's Jack. Jack pulls numbers. It's insane. Jack shows literally how the literacy rate, how we have 16, 17-year-old kids that are at a 3rd and 4th grade reading level.
That's right. So
how do we expect that child, who probably does not have a father at home, how do we expect that child, if not through education, to somehow magically, just to transform when he or she is 21 years old and go, ta-da, I'm here, now I can go qualify for a job or know what to do. It's insane. It's a lack of stewardship over our youth. It's absolutely irresponsible. It is morally wrong. It's as corrupt as heck. I mean, so we're expecting them to do what?
Exactly. So right now,
and I don't care about the color or the ethnicity, black, white, red, purple.
Right.
It doesn't
matter. That's right. So now we have a school district actually in the area I'm running in, State Board of Education District 7 in one of my counties, where 60% of the children in 3rd grade cannot read on grade level. Now, while
say that again, 60%. Okay.
Of the children,
how many children are we talking about?
Cannot read on grade level.
Give me some number. How many children are we talking about?
That would probably be, let's see, probably about 5,000 elementary.
Okay, so 10,000 kids?
Let's say maybe about 1,500, 1,600 children.
Okay, so 1,500 children are way behind.
Right, but that has, the 3rd grade reading level has a direct correlation to graduation rates. So that's why people always focus on what's the achievement, what's the gaps, what's happening at the 3rd grade reading level, because in education, that is a direct correlation to graduation rates. So when you have 60% of your children in 3rd grade cannot read on grade level, there is a major problem. And what I tell people all the time, another problem with this the sexualization of our children and bringing in this sex ed and bringing in all this transgender and everything, right? There's so many hours in a day that you have to educate a child.
Exactly.
If we're spending 30 minutes, 45 minutes, let's say in that classroom, right, on sexual education, then that's 30 or 40 minutes we're not spending on reading, that we're not spending on science, that we're not spending in math. And these are core subjects that children need to learn and master to be successful.
It's guys like Robert Kiyosaki, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, or even The Art of War, right? Sun Tzu, who is not even a Christian. These guys write about it. It's called capital allocation. And the number one capital asset you have is time. And we are misappropriating the capital allocation of our children. We're wasting their time, and they can't get it back. And we're propping it up. I want Becca to pull up an image, and I'm ready for war. Becca, pull up an image of the slang they're teaching kids in a classroom. And when it's up, okay, here we go. I want you to look at this, okay? Now, please understand, I'm not here to exploit. This is gross. Right? But I want you to read this, okay? I cut the top off by purpose. The clitoris, vulva, of course. Okay, so it goes under on the left, and then it gives slang, and it's called sexual slang, right? Some wives will smack their husbands if they use these words. This is with the genderbread man. By the time they've colored the sex organs and made lists of slang words, this is in the classroom. This is a classroom project. Right. 45 minutes would be it's probably hours, okay? Everyone has giggled off a good deal of nervous energy and embarrassment. They've also gotten a good idea of where these body parts are. You're not teaching them where body parts are. Do you know who this is for? 10-year-olds.
I believe that. I've seen this.
10-year-olds. Do you want a 10-year-old in this country using those words?
Right. So we've seen this in education. Like I said, y'all, this is in Texas, okay? What Jaco is saying is not in other states, other countries, other places.
How's that boy at 10 now going to respect girls? He's going to call her by those names. How's he going to honor his wife? How's he going to protect? It's not happening.
Never. And so we saw this. We've seen parents that have got up and read books in board meetings and been arrested on the spot for
lawn boy,
for indecency in front of minors, arrested at the board meeting because there were children at the board meeting, but yet it was a book from her son's classroom. You know, we've seen pornography in schools. In a school district outside of Austin, we saw actual pornography being used in the high school in the 9th grade. For a teaching support for curriculum. And then the superintendent of the school district comes out and says, well, that's the teacher's First Amendment right. And the school district will protect the teacher's First Amendment right.
The teacher. What about the child's First Amendment right? You know, we have universities now that literally teach prostitution as a class in this country.
Yes.
Prostitution as a class. So how do you teach prostitution as a class? What's your assignment? Literally, there's children at schools where the teachers tell them to write a paper in this country, a paper in high school, about their same-sexual experience, to go have a same-sex experience and write a paper on it, right? It is absolute manipulation. Mm-hmm. It is an abandonment of responsibility. And so back to the money, it's always about money. It's money, and it's indoctrination. It's creating a class. So let's dive into what do we do? Becca, you found that bill, right? Or the tell me his name again.
Representative Steve Toth, his transparency bill. Transparency in education.
Pull that back up for me because I want people to know, because we're going into now what can parents do? Okay, here's Steve Toth, legislator, the Transparency Act. I'm asking people to please dig into this.
Okay, that
Toth,
one is from it.
This is from a while back. This is 2013.
Yes.
Okay, but that's Steve Toth.
Yes.
All right. I'm asking people. I don't have it. We'll see if we can find it. But I'm asking people. So that's not the right bill. To please go dig in Texas. Steve Toth is running another transparency bill, of course, obviously. And I'm actually glad we just pulled that up from 2013 because it shows the viewers that he's been on this for a long time. He truly is about transparency. What do we do? What do we do? You're running for office.
I am.
Talk about that, please.
So, I have, coming from being a school board trustee, I have so much data. I have a wonderful study from Harvard that shows that the true key to literacy success for children is parent involvement. So this whole idea of kicking parents out of education or prosecuting them for showing up to school board meetings or, ruining their lives. What did we see was it Arizona, right? Where they were keeping dossiers on the parents who would show up to school board meetings and then contact their employers and try to ruin them. This whole
that's happening in Dallas today. We've got
goodness.
people running for office in Dallas today where they literally call in their own businesses, where they literally call their employees and spread false information and threaten the employees to put pressure on the business owner not to run for an office. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. In education.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I have my own story also. I've been through the cancel culture and still standing here for children, still standing for protecting 5.5 million children.
I showed this book. I should show this book. This book says no weapon formed against you will prosper.
Amen.
That's what this book says, the
name.
Bible.
Amen. Yeah. So anyways, we're seeing the idea of kicking parents out of education is such a foreign concept to me. As a school board trustee, we had several meetings, several community initiatives trying to bring parents into the conversation, working to bring parents into our schools, setting up mentor programs, setting up community advisory boards. We did everything we could to bring parents to the table because we knew, and I know that it's crucial to student success. So this is a new foreign concept of pushing parents out of education. So then you have to ask yourself, why? Why would anybody, knowing that we have these wonderful studies from Harvard, knowing that we have all this great data that shows that parent involvement is crucial to student success, why now? Why are certain school districts having parents arrested? Why are they blocking them from school board meetings? Why are they banning parents from coming on campus? Why are they insisting that all teacher meetings happen via Zoom, that parents are not allowed face-to-face meetings anymore? So to restore trust, we have a huge breakdown of trust right now between families and educators. And the only way to restore that trust, like in any relationship, the only way to restore the trust is to come back in with transparency, is to make it completely transparent. Bring the parents back into the classrooms, bring the parents back on campus, bring the parents back to advising school boards, and let's have transparency and let's restore trust and rebuild trust.
The parents, you have to get the parents' input. There's two, again, Becca, man, you're working so hard. Thank you so much. Becca, Dan, behind the scenes, Tammy, thank you so much, everybody. But Becca, can you pull up the graphs on the curriculums? The graph we have on the 6th through 8th grade curriculum. I just want you to touch on that. This is something you sent me that I want you to touch on. Just again, and again, I know people may say, you're beating a dead horse. Oh, no, this horse is not dead. Not yet. Talk to me about this graphic. Austin Independent School District elementary lessons. This is an overview of the lessons 6th through 8th grade.
Okay, so yes, this is from Austin ISD's website. So again, we're talking about here now, okay? This is current. You can see this is the 2019-2020 school year, okay?
Yeah.
So under identity, you can see and this is the 6th grade, differentiate. So we're talking about 11-year-old children, okay? 11-year-old girls, 10, 11-year-old girls and boys. Differentiate between gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. Well, in order to teach a child how to differentiate between these different groups, first you have to teach them all the different groups.
Of course.
And everything that's involved.
Which by default, you are desensitizing them, which is a number one method of a pedophile. Okay, you're grooming them. You're planting seeds prematurely. Their brains are not ready.
They're not ready.
No way are they ready.
No. So then, in order to differentiate between gender ID, you have to cover all the gender IDs, right? In order to cover gender expression, right, and sexual orientation. So, I just don't understand how we could possibly think that teaching an 11-year-old child this curriculum fulfills the Texas Constitution.
Or could have any positive outcome in that child's life.
Right.
Any positive outcome.
So, the Texas Constitution in Article 7 says the whole purpose of a free and public education is to preserve our liberties and our freedoms.
That's not in that curriculum.
That's not that.
No way.
No.
So how have we migrated?
Now you're sexualizing children.
Okay, you are sexualizing children, which then, do you know how difficult this makes? People say, Jaco, what do you care? And I've had people ask me, you're so adamant about education. Is it because your mom's a teacher and we have 6 teachers in the family? I go, no, you don't understand. When this happens in the classroom, we have more children to go rescue from trafficking because they get groomed and desensitized in the classroom. Now when a pervert or a predator uses Zuckerberg's platform and Dorsey's platform, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and they approach a child with these topics on social media, the child no longer has a red flag.
Right. It's normal.
It's
normal conversation. It's normal verbiage. It's just completely normal to them. So
I talk to these adults about sex. Why should I not talk to this adult? Why? Because a child is not going to differentiate because their brain is not ready. And look, I'm a guy. I'm from Africa. We do things a little differently. I'm a guy's guy, okay? 2 genders. I'm a guy. And let me tell you, our brains are not fully formed until 28. Frontal lobe. That's proven. 28. 11.
Right.
Sex at 8, 7, 10, 11. Porn at 8. Come on.
That's right.
It is absolute abuse.
That's right. It is.
Did we have another graphic on that, Becca? Is that the light? You have another one? Okay, see if you can pull another one. I want to get all your stuff up here. Julie, okay, so parents today, talk to me about your particular campaign. Talk to me about the position you're running for, what the role is there. You're running for the State Board of Education.
I am.
Of Texas.
I am.
Okay, thank you, by the way.
Yeah,
God bless you.
I told you it's my pro-life beliefs that drive me to serve children. When the Bible says, well, the Lord says that children are a blessing from God, I believe that the Word of God says that they are a blessing to their parents. They're not a blessing to government. And so absolutely, children belong to their families. They belong to their parents. Children do not belong to the government.
That's why we fight. We must. I can't not. I wake up. I don't have a choice. By God, we must defend and protect children.
Yes. So let me tell you. So I'm running for the State Board of Education. My district is District 7. It is a statewide position that affects all of the state of Texas, but there are 11 counties that can specifically vote for me. And so one of the reasons why I'm running is, we just went through health textbooks and sex ed textbooks in the last State Board of Education meeting. And so what was so offensive in a textbook that they were about to adopt, that thank God the publisher agreed to come back and change the wording, was the wording in the textbook. Throughout the textbook, over 600 times it said, talk to a trusted adult.
Oh, absolutely.
Parents were completely, talk to your parents was completely omitted.
That book, If Perfectly Normal, says talk to your priest, which I have a whole nother conversation about, because they know how, unfortunately, the Catholic organization has been infiltrated by child abuse, right? It says talk to your priest if you have questions. You're right. They do this.
So this book completely omitted parents, which a lot of us had had problems with. And so, a lot of great grassroots groups, when the State Board of Education meets, they meet Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And so a lot of grassroots groups, Texas Eagle Forum, Grassroots Gold, Concerned Women for America, a lot of wonderful conservative and Christian grassroots groups went to work and started calling and emailing and making phone calls. And thank God the publisher agreed to change it. And they changed it to say, talk to your parents or trusted adult.
Amazing. Bring the parent back into the conversation. Our previous show was about family, and we're going to come back there. It's family.
Absolutely.
It's family.
It's the first team God created.
Come on. Some of these, and the most sacred institution on earth is marriage. Husband, wife.
That's right.
Marriage.
Covenant.
It's covenant. Absolutely. And so, in sex, by the way, is a contract. It's spiritual. It's metaphysical. It's physical. It's emotional. It's everything. Sex is, it's bonding. Mm-hmm. And so when you twist a child up sexually, at times, unfortunately, it's irreparable. When we see that, even with survivors, it's decades of work reversing sexual trauma.
The damage.
This is, and people want to just go, we consult on the Epstein case and Ghislaine Maxwell and all that stuff. And I go, guys, okay, pay attention there, but forget about that. It's in your child's school. It's so close to home. It's the neighbor. It's on the street. And there can't be a tolerance to this. And again, it's not about the left, the right, black, white, Hispanic, whatever. I don't care. South African American, whatever. It's children, and they must be protected, because again, Scripture says, rather you put a millstone around your neck, throw yourself in the ocean, and
hurt
one of these.
That's right.
Oh, we're hurting more than one.
And so, Jaco, if it were truthful sexual education, right? You and I, at an appropriate age, we would have no problem with it. What this
like teach abstinence.
Yes.
Teach the dangers.
Which, by the way, is state law. Teaching the abstinence
in Texas.
It's the state law in Texas that teaching the abstinence is always the preferred method to prevent against sexually transmitted disease and to prevent pregnancy. Right? Abstinence is always that is state law. That is codified in the state of Texas. And we also have another great state law that a lot of parents don't know about, is that now in the state of Texas, you must opt your child in to sex ed in their school district.
Yeah.
Now, school districts are getting around this by sending home a waiver that says, do you want your child taught in health classes, right?
Yeah, I know it's health classes.
Right.
And look, when you're a parent,
Yeah, because you're thinking, I want my child to learn how to eat right,
I got 900
exercise.
emails to read a week. I got things, and all of a sudden, and we homeschool, by the way. And back to the reading thing, I just want to tell you, and this is all credit to my wife, okay? I'll just say, if it's good in our house, give credit to God first and then my wife. And if I get a little crumb, it's okay. But our 6-year-old prides herself. She goes, Dad, I read 12 books this month. 6-year-old, right? And then I look at her and her sister who's 4 who's reading, and her brother who's 2 who knows all these letters. And I just paused the other day and I said, what about the child that doesn't? What about the child that doesn't have a Philippa in their life, doesn't have the opportunity to homeschool, is fully dependent on their meals coming from the school, number one. Okay? Well, hello, COVID. Okay? Decimated. Their education is literally a lifeline for them. Literally, they're hanging on by a thread. They don't have parents that maybe have a business and maybe can come work for the family business or whatever else, right? And I just pondered in that moment when my 6-year-old came again and just I said, hey, I just gave you that book yesterday. She's like, I'm done. I want another one, right? And it hit me. That's amazing. What a blessing. Praise God. But
there's a lot of children who do not have that situation. And so just so you know, in the state of Texas, I was one of the leaders saying that we had to get back face to face as soon as possible. Because as a trustee, the phone calls that I received were parents saying, Trustee Pickren, our family's about to be homeless. If our children cannot go back to school, we cannot work, and we're about to be homeless. And I have all kinds of data and studies that show that being homeless is a far worse situation. It's detrimental to a child versus a possible exposure to COVID.
Equally, we have all the data that showed that sex trafficking went through the roof, familiar trafficking
child
went through
abuse
at home, and porn use and all of it. I mean, and companies like Pornhub raked it in, and then all your big tech companies just say, it's an algorithm. We have nothing to do with it. Again, and I'm beating this. The actual office you're running for and your constituents, so we can call to action these people. Say, listen, this is me, Jaco, fighting sex trafficking, fighting for children, saying, police, you've got to be able to recognize the voter record, the history, the work that people do that we want to elect into office. We can no longer in America elect personality and persona. You have to smooth talker, Ivy League, right? I do not give a darn. What are you physically doing on the ground? Right. Who are you fighting for, and why are you fighting? So
you can go to my website, www.juliepickren, JULIEPICKREN, juliepickren.com. You can go to my website and see the issues that I'm working on, that I have been working on. But yes, and so another thing, the reason why I keep going back to textbooks is because Texas has 5.5 million school-age children in public school. And so the textbooks that the State Board of Education adopts for our 5.5 million children are the textbooks that are printed for the entire country. So whenever you elect an official, when you elect somebody to the State Board of Education, you're not just affecting education in Texas, you're affecting education for the whole country. That's why I have endorsements from many other states, from Tennessee, from Florida, from many other states, because people who are in education, they understand the importance of Texas's State Board of Education. They understand the importance of the curriculum that we set, of the standards that we set, of the textbooks that we adopt. Because truthfully, in education, as Texas goes, the nation goes.
Well, this is where I want to call on our national audience, right? And heck, even the international audience. If you've got family in Texas, you call them. You call your family in Texas and you say, hey, you guys fix stuff there in Texas. You go elect a school board because it's going to affect my child in Minnesota and Chicago, whatever.
Absolutely.
You go fix this in Texas.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're not a republic for no reason in Texas. They fought for that. Go fix it. It's on us. 100%. And look, I think something in our society and our culture that's just, and this is in the church, out the church, left, right, center, libertarian, whoever, right? The lack of accountability is sickening, number one. Mm-hmm. The lack of self-awareness, Jordan Peterson speaks about this often. The lack of self-awareness is sickening, okay? We always want to point the finger somewhere else. No, it's on us. This is on us. This is like I say 65, 72 million babies being aborted. It's on us.
That's right.
Okay? That's on us. And we better be the watchman on the wall, Ezekiel 33, that warns so that the blood's not on our hands. This is on Texas. I'm sorry. I know Texas, we got broad shoulders. Carry the weight for the nation when it comes to education, because we do set the precedent.
And we do. Like, we need help. So I'll tell you, in textbooks that we've seen recently in the past couple of years that have come before the State Board of Education for approval. And I'll remind you again, textbooks that the state of Texas approves is what's printed for the whole country, okay? So we've seen science textbooks that reflect the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal as a way of moving forward, as a way of healing the earth. We have seen textbooks that say
And who voted on that? I mean, they can't even get the Green New Deal to pass in Congress or else.
But if we're going to put it in textbooks. Children.
Of course, because now you're breeding the voter class for the future.
Right. We have had textbooks that, part of the National Sexuality Education Standards that say that all living things can reproduce. Now, I told you I'm a Texas girl.
I said bestiality is coming.
So I'm a Texas girl. I'm sorry. You put two bulls in a pasture, you're never going to get a calf.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
How are they going to reproduce?
All living things cannot reproduce. It is a male and it is a female. And that's it.
I'm laughing because I saw a couple of Oklahoma boys. I mean, you got to go see this on YouTube. They take a bull, and this bull comes out of a trailer, right? And this bull starts moaning, and the heifers run. They sprint, right? There was not a single bull sprinting to the bull. Okay.
Right. Right.
Okay. There was not one bull
Won't
that
happen.
came and said, "Hey, come on. I believe, comprehensive sex ed. We can procreate. Come on." There was not a single bull. Okay.
Yeah, I laugh. I always say, okay, any of these liberal superintendents or school board trustees that are endorsing this national sexuality education standard, I said, please, will y'all just please go visit your ag departments and go to your ag classes. You'll
go to nature.
Right,
nature will tell the truth.
You'll get straightened out very quickly.
A lion is not going to behave like a peacock. Okay, let me just tell you that. I'm from Africa. Okay, he's going to be a lion.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, it's insanity, right? And so look, no, I one thing, as we're closing here, what a joy. You're such a joy, honestly, and you're welcome
Thank
anytime back. And I want to continue this conversation, and we got to get this message out wide. And I'm thankful for all the support we get in fighting sex trafficking, but it's beyond just a child that's being sexually abused. It's earlier. There's manipulation way earlier. You may not want to talk about this. So if I'm crossing a line here, tell me. Okay? Just say, Jaco, that's private. But I came to knowledge that you're following a principle that I really believe and that I know for a fact is biblical, that don't let the left hand know what the right hand's doing. And you are, maybe this is a thank you. Maybe you don't want to talk about it. Thank you for also supporting others who are running. When you could have taken it for yourself, when donor dollars are going to come to support you, you diverted it to someone else. And I know about this. And so I want to tell the audience that we have a person here who truly, you're for the children. We're for the children. 20-something years going. That's what we're about. It's just, I know that happened, and you don't need to talk about it. But just thank you. Because it's not smoke and mirrors. It's real. You're real. This is real. This is your heart. And so my prayer for you is that you do get onto the Texas State Board of Education, which will affect the nation.
Right.
So technically you're running a national race because you're going to affect millions of children. And you threw out a number several times, right? 5.5 million children.
That's right.
There's only 3 million people on planet Earth that speak my language. Afrikaans. Okay, it's a language that they're trying to kill in South Africa. That's a whole nother conversation. 5.5 million children is a nation.
That's right.
It's a country.
And Jaco, it's so important because we will lose it. We will lose it. You have to think about the children now, what's happened with critical race theory, what's happened with intersectionality, what's happening with the sexualization of children.
Equity.
Is that, yes, equity forever was a finance term. Now equity has a whole,
oh my God.
Can be
but you know what equity
redefined.
is? I can tell you what equity is. Being from South Africa, it's affirmative action.
Well, in here, I always tell people critical race theory and equity are two branches of the same tree, and that tree is socialism because we're focused on equal outcome. And there's never been anything in Texas or America that's equal outcome because equal outcome is socialism. And so we could talk about that later because we've lost already some really great programs in Texas.
Another show.
Yeah. But anyway, so you can go to my website. You can go to www.juliepickren.com. There you can read my list of endorsements. I have fantastic endorsements, like I said, from all over the country, from local leaders and parents all the way up to national figures. So I would just greatly appreciate any support and help. But yes, it takes a team. It takes a team of people who are willing to stand for parents, who are willing to stand for children, who are willing to stand for Texas values, for conservative values, because the battle is here. The battle is now. And what will happen is, 10 years from now, this is our voting population 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's our country.
So if we're going to teach them, if we're going to sexualize them, and we are going to teach them in principles of socialism through critical race theory, then in 10 years, socialism and sexualization at a whole nother level will not be a foreign concept to them. It will just be a natural transition.
No, we got people right now in this country talking about a child should be able to give consent for sex. Consent. They're teaching consent. We didn't get into that today because we could go forever. Look, I want to thank you, and please come back. And when's the election? When? Give us a timeline.
So early voting starts February the 14th. Election day, the primary election day, is March 1st. I would greatly appreciate all. Our Republicans are separated. Our primaries are separated by party. So that March 1st vote. And early voting on February 14th will be for Republican voters. I would greatly appreciate the Republican votes in the primary, and then I'll be on the November ballot in January.
Yeah.
The November ballot for the general election.
General election for Texas State School Board and
JuliePickren.com.
Julie Pickren. We'll throw it on the screen as well, Julie. And I know you're here to spread the message. Parents, please, for the love of life, get involved.
Absolutely.
Get involved in your child's life. Get involved. Watch what they're watching. I want you to become a helicopter parent. I do not want you to be your child's best friend. That's not your job. Fathers, you've got to earn your daughters' hearts. You have to get your sons and train them in the ways on how to honor women and respect women.
Absolutely.
If they play a game, you play the game. Get your sons off of live game rooms where the predators run around. Go to every single teacher that teaches your child and press them. Teachers, you don't need to like me as a teacher. Your job is to educate the child, not indoctrinate. Okay? Let's get back to things that's going to help that child lift themselves up. Math, science, critical thinking is lost.
Right.
Critical thinking.
And Jaco, on the subject of teachers, I've had the privilege of speaking to almost 5,000 teachers since the spring till just recently. Teachers, there's a 3,000 teacher shortage right now in the state of Texas. It's the first time ever. This is a huge problem. So now your
ratios are out of whack, right?
Because teachers, it's being blamed on COVID. Like a lot of things are being blamed on
it's
COVID.
A scapegoat,
but I can tell you, after talking with over 5,000 teachers do not want to teach the sexualization of children. Our teachers are great people. They've dedicated their lives to education. They're not doing it for a paycheck. They're doing it because they love children. They love education.
It's definitely not for a paycheck. I can tell you, I was raised by a teacher. It's not for a paycheck.
Firsthand. So our teachers, they do not want to sexualize our children. Our teachers do not want to teach critical race theory. They don't want to teach one set of kids that they're oppressors and another set of kids they're victims.
But they're threatened with their livelihood and their passion. I actually think that's a form of abuse too. You've got to, because I'll say this, being a police officer, a firefighter, a teacher, it's a calling.
Absolutely.
If it's not a calling,
it's a gift from God.
If it's not a calling, get out of Dodge, because you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. I have an aunt, 50 years running, teaching first grade. The amount of lives that she's touched, it's immeasurable, right? The influence, it better be a calling, or you'll go be in an asylum, right? So love on the teachers, the unions, the organism, the mechanism of the state school boards, the politics. That's what I want parents to rally against.
That is where we need parent involvement. So we're almost there. We're almost through developing the policy, a great bill that bans taxpayer-funded lobbying in education. That will come around.
For Texas.
Yes, for Texas. That will come around the next legislative session, and we're going to need parent involvement. We're going to need parents that show up in Austin at the Capitol to testify. We're going to need our grassroots in full effect, because we have to ban taxpayer funded. Our tax dollars should never be used, right? You have to wrap your mind around this. When the trustee from Aldine ISD, that is Viola Garcia, that is now the president of NSBA, when she wrote that letter to the White House asking that the Patriot Act be used against parents to destroy families and destroy families' lives, that was all funded and done with our tax dollars.
They're making us complicit.
And so we never, the SECUS, right? Done this curriculum, the sexualization curriculum written by Planned Parenthood and the NSBA, that's done with our tax dollars. Yeah. And so we have to have a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying and education.
For the same reason, I got to do this again. We have to start voting with our dollar. We have to. Down at the grocery store. And again, it's not about political party. It's about theory and ideology and what people are going to teach our children, right? And that's why I like guys like Patriot Mobile, legitimately, who are conservative Christians, who actually, and I know people don't know this, they actually sent a tribe of their staff to the border with us. When we went there to go protect children on the border, who are migrant children being trafficked, right? They said, hey, we're going to be a corporation that's going to put our money where our mouth is. We're going to put our dollars where it matters. For the local law enforcement, local farmers, those people who say, well, now all these kids are here. What do we do with these kids? We literally went to a shelter that feeds the kids. Patriot Mobile showed up with boxes of food.
Praise God.
And it wasn't a publicity stunt. They didn't do any press release on this. It was not about that. It was about, hey, this is just who we are. And so that's why I'm proud for them to be part of the show. And I say, people, go 972-PATRIOT and type in bottom line and let's start voting with our dollar. But then also, let's start holding accountable those who steward our dollars, in government, and left, right, center. I don't care which political party.
That's right.
It's time to do it right. We must do it for the children. God bless you.
Thank you.
I speak favor and blessing over you. We pray for you.
Thank you.
For your family. Stay in the fight. The word will sustain you when it gets tough, and it will, and it should, because it's worth something.
It's worth it.
Because it's worth it, it costs something. Sacrifice. Right. And you're having huge sacrifice, and I know your family's sacrificing, so thank them for me as well. For all the viewers, this is one you got to spread. I mean, come on. Do your part. Please do your part. Go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like it, notify it, follow Julie's social media, which will be on the screen. Follow Julie's social media, track her career, her race. Call all your family members in Texas and say, hey, if you live in that jurisdiction or wherever, vote. We need this woman on the school board and more like you. You may be able to point them at others also because, apparently a 60% conservative court is not enough.
Right.
Apparently it needs to be 80 before we can,
There's a lot of pressure,
There's a lot of
so
pressure,
you have to
of
elect
course.
people that have backbones that are willing to stand up for
there's
their
a lot of
conservative
political
values.
capital and political will and
Right.
a lot of strings and puppet masters and things. But children. And when it comes to children, you take your ideology and your politics and you can toss it in the river. It's
That's right.
Defend, protect, nurture, nourish, educate, elevate. It's about kids. Thank you. God bless you. See you guys next time.